So I just want to say thanks so much for being here and being willing to share your story. It's not easy. I know it's not easy, but we talk about in this church all the time about, not being Christians who are going to shove whatever happened to us in our past under the rug, but we're going to, pull the rug out from the devil, from his feet, and expose him, expose what's happened, not hide it. Because I read something before that said our secrets keep us sick. And when we can share our stories in a healthy environment, I think that's so important. It's important for our growth, for your spiritual growth, the growth in your marriage, your family. And we were just talking about how the verse in Revelation that we don't just overcome the devil by Jesus, which is great, obviously, but we also overcome by sharing our stories. So super grateful for you to share your story.
Yeah, and I believe all that too, and that's why I'm doing this, because I feel like, I and many men have a tendency to sweep that stuff under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are emotional or hard to deal with. It's easy to just try to ignore it in unhealthy ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of sharing that, just kind of getting it off my chest a little bit too. And I think there's a lot of good out of that. And there's a lot of people that have stories, and I enjoyed seeing other people's stories just like you, and it kind of motivated me to want to tell mine. And I think this story could possibly do that for other people too. And
I think so too.
I know a lot of people have stories and they carry that stuff around. And so I hope this does encourage people to do the same, just like I felt. So.
I think it will, especially like I was saying, people see you come to church every single week and they probably just see a nice put together guy. And not that you aren't, but it's nice to know, wow, he's been through that and he comes every week. He comes every week with a smile on his face. His kids are here, his wife's here, and it may not be perfect. And we're obviously going to get into that, and you're going to share your story and what you've been through. But it's encouraging for people to know, I've been worshiping next to this guy this whole time, and I never knew, and he's still here. Like I said on Sunday, he stayed in the story, and it's all because of God. So let's just dive right in. We're going to talk about your childhood. Obviously, we know our childhood kind of creates the adults that we are today. So wherever you're ready to start.
Yeah. All right. Well, my story starts in the very beginning. I was born in California. Mom and dad, both drug addicts, alcoholics. So their marriage didn't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
I was a young kid. I remember them being married, seeing violence, the fighting and the yelling and stuff like that. I did have one sister. I would imagine she, about a year and a half younger, doesn't really remember much of that, but I do.
So you're the oldest?
Yeah, oldest of two, yeah.
Okay.
So my parents got a divorce. My father, drug addict, went to jail. So I remember, being with my mom and visiting my dad in jail and stuff like that. And then, going down a little bit farther, so my mom just kept with the drugs, and to the point where she lost custody of us. My grandparents, were like kind of a stable relationship to the family, like the one solid foundation of love and stability.
Nice.
So they knew we needed help, and basically, went through some court battles, and my mom lost custody of us kids for 3 years. I was in second grade, third grade, fourth grade.
Okay, so you're young.
Yep. So I remember all that stuff, going into the judge's chambers and, talking about this and that with the judge. So that's all crazy and everything. I remember my mom, talk about planting seeds really early in your life and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Being a drug addict, I remember we were sitting in a car and she would like hold the pipe up to our mouth and light the pipe when I was like, second grade, and basically, be doing drugs when I was in like the second grade. I didn't know what I was doing, but they thought it was so funny. And so they'd be laughing. I'm like, yeah, I'm making my mom laugh,
Aww.
So, that does come up later on in my story as I'll get there and everything. Okay. So yeah, divorce, jail, the drugs, you
You had to
know,
grow up fast.
yeah. And so basically my dad was never there either. So I was had to be the man of the house at a young
Okay, yeah.
age and everything like
Right.
that. There was one point too during that time where like my mom took us kids and like ran away when she was gonna lose custody. So we were like living hotel to
Oh, you
hotel,
were on the
basically
run.
homeless. Yeah. People were looking for us and stuff.
Your
And
grandparents were looking.
yeah, they were looking. And then I can remember all that stuff. And one day, like we're literally starving and had no food, no money, no nothing. My mom finally calls my grandparents, says, "Okay, come get these kids," you
Oh
know.
man.
So they show up with a bunch of food, and we're just like, "Oh, finally, we get to eat all this food and
Oh
stuff." And
geez.
so after that, my mom moved to Wisconsin.
Okay.
So
So you're still in California.
yep, I stayed in California, and like I said, I was in second, third, fourth grade. So after that, I missed a lot of school, had a hard time in school, this and that. Um, my mom sort of cleaned up her act, and, some more court battles. She actually earned the custody back of my sister and myself. So when I
Oh
was in the
wow.
fourth grade, we moved to Wisconsin, and that's pretty much where I grew up. So
Okay.
a lot of my family still live in California. They come out this way to visit every now and then, stuff like that. So yeah, now I'm in Wisconsin. I'm gonna check my notes here, just have this ready.
So
You
fourth
know.
grade still.
Yeah, fourth grade. So I missed a lot of school, so I definitely struggled in there. Had to get a lot of help with that
Yeah,
and
I bet.
stuff. Um, my mom, she still used drugs and drank, but it wasn't stuff that overcame her whole life. And sometimes drugs can consume you as a person, and you really lose what matters, like your kids. How can anything matter more than that?
Right.
But
Yeah.
sometimes that happens. So anyway, she was able to get past that, and
She was kind of a functioning addict.
yes,
Okay.
that's pretty much the best way to put it.
Okay.
So growing up, my mom had different boyfriends. Like it seemed like it was like every 2 years. So there'd be different men coming in and out of the house. You know, so sometimes I hated the guy, sometimes I liked the guy, and it was always different. So there was really never a stable like man in my life or anything like that. So where I grew up to, the thing is we had no family where we were at. It was just my mom,
Nobody.
my sister, and myself, just the three of us. But as we were there, people around us became family. So the people I consider family, a lot of them are not even actually my blood family, but I still consider them family.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I think John just said that at Love and Respect that blood. How did he say it?
Something about just blood doesn't necessarily mean that they're family
Is it
either.
DNA or something? Something like that. But
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're blood related. That doesn't determine who your family is. So yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, living life, we were like the poorest family that
Actions
I
speak
knew.
louder than DNA. Is that what it was?
Something like that.
Something like that. Okay.
So my mom worked at Hardee's fast food restaurant, front end server, so making minimum wage, raising two kids, so that's how I grew up. Like I was a giant kid. I'm like, Mom, I need shoes. We couldn't really afford shoes. So I always had like the rattiest clothes, the smallest, like barely habitable home, stuff like that. That's how I'm used to growing up, But she loved us and she tried her best, and I know that.
Okay.
So, talking about planting seeds too. And I'm a young kid. I was probably in middle school by this time, and I stumbled across porn tapes in the closet, and I pull this out. I'm like, oh, it was VCR back then and stuff like that. So being a young kid, putting a movie on, like, what the heck is this stuff, and all the things that can, affect somebody too and stuff.
For sure, yeah, that really can just change your mindset, and you're already not even having your father in your life, and seeing men come and go, maybe even abusive relationships with your mom and her boyfriend. So it's really that has the power to really just shift what love looks like for you.
Yeah, so definitely affected by that. But kind of going on, so I basically went through middle school, high school. My mom was pretty open about her drug use, and I grew up thinking basically like marijuana is was kind of the thing, and you know, just seeing it so open and around, it never seemed like a bad thing or
Yeah,
anything like
it's
that.
normal.
So of course I got into that, and then which kind of led to other drug use and doing party stuff and all that kind of lifestyle. Um, so I think I was in high school. My mom, her latest boyfriend was married, and she had an affair with a married man. His wife found out, and he moved in with us, and basically they got married within a year or so. So I actually had a stepdad at one point.
Oh wow.
Um, so major alcoholics, drug use, was going on the whole time. Like my mom wanted to quit drinking and stuff, and my stepdad, his name was Tom, was not able to. So just, through my whole life, I've seen, just drunk parents, violence, just terrible things, like all the time,
Yeah, it's painful.
So I hate, like, when I'm thinking about my kids, like just seeing us, if we like yell or anything like that, like I know what that does to kids when you're seeing your parents yell, and
Yeah,
you
you've
don't really
experienced
understand
it.
what's going on. You're just like, oh, I just hope everything's okay,
For sure.
Anyway, mom had an affair, or they got married. Um, so basically, let's see, this is, I guess I was like 19 years old, my mom's 40th birthday. At this point, I'm graduated high school. I live on my own in an apartment, had a girlfriend at the
Oh
time.
wow.
Um, my mom's 40th birthday, I drive to her house, and I'm waiting there like, hey mom, I got a birthday present for you. Where you at? Like they were carpet installers. So and they worked together. They had like their own like subcontractor install business type stuff. So, okay, we're on our way home. And so I'm just waiting there at the house, right? Me and my girlfriend at that time. And, they're calling me back saying that they're in this big fight. And I said, okay. So Tom, my stepdad at that time, kicks my mom out of the vehicle, like, get out, and she's walking on the side of the road, and she calls me, Jayson, he kicked me out of the vehicle. I said, Mom, I'm on my way. Like, where are you at? I'm going to come there right now. I'm on my way. And, I had a really bad feeling about this at the time. I was like, man, I have a bad feeling about this. So she tells me where she's at, and I'm on the phone off and on with her. She's maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road. I tell her, I said, Mom, I said, I got a really bad feeling. I was like, get in the ditch and just go like stand by a tree or something. Like I just had this feeling about something. And so I'm talking with her, and we lose a call, and I drive in there, and I arrive at the scene, and the van's pulled over on the side. They have a bigger van than mine, a huge, like, giant work van, I arrive at the scene, and what I see is my stepdad, Tom, in the ditch holding my mother. He hit her with the van. He drove into the ditch, hit her with the van. The front end of the van is completely V'd in. Like, it looked like it hit a tree going like 80 miles an hour.
My goodness.
And he's holding her, and I run down in the ditch. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And she's like, she's dead, Jayson. Your mom is dead. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm looking at her. I could see her leg. It's ripped open. I could see meat hanging out of her leg. So I'm in instant shock. I can't even believe what's going on right now. And So at that time, I just immediately called 911. I'm like, we need an ambulance to come out here, you know? So at this time, people are starting to find out. People are calling, like, what the heck is going on? Like, my sister calls, Jayson, what is going on? And I'm like, our mom's dead. So that was, can you imagine telling your sister that my stepdad just ran over my mom on the side of the road? So ambulance comes, police come, you know, all the flashing lights everywhere. This is, you know, in the middle of the night and everything like that. You know, ambulance takes her to the hospital, and we're just kind of answering questions with the police and everything like that. So they basically put him in handcuffs and they haul him off or whatever. Mm-hmm. He just admits to everything at that time, what he did and everything, and all the evidence is there. There's no, you know, you can basically see what happened. You know, it was interesting because, like I said, I had this really bad feeling. So, like, I even recorded the phone call, our last phone call we ever had. I had a way to record. I had a flip phone at the time, and there was a way to actually record the conversation. So I actually recorded on my phone the last conversation I had with my mom.
Oh, man.
And basically, I was on the phone with her when it happened.
Wow.
Like, you can kind of hear it and everything like that.
That's terrible. I'm sorry.
And then, so they actually use that as like evidence in the court and everything like that. So after the cops say, okay, you can go or whatever, they get our story. We drive to the hospital, and like the whole town is at this hospital. We're in a small town. There's like people everywhere, cars everywhere, flashing lights everywhere. Cop stops us like, hey, no going over here. I'm like, that's my mom in there. He's like, okay, go ahead, you know, lets us by. And we go in there, and she, you know, the doctors were waiting around. The doctors like, we tried to, you know, save her and all this stuff, but there's nothing we can do, you know. So they say, okay, you can say goodbye to her or whatever. And we're just like, what the heck is going on, you know? Terrible. So we do that, and, you know, after everything kind of settles down, we're sitting in the lobby of the hospital. And I can't remember where we talked about this. I don't know if it was in the Love and Respect class, or what it was, or if it was one of the men's group, but they talk about the man on the train, and the kids are going crazy, and they're all like, why, you know, why don't you contain your children or something like that? And you look at something, if you imagine what they went through or something, they'd understand. So he says, oh, their mom was just died, and the kids are acting out or something. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know. When I heard that, it kind of reminded me of this situation. That's why I brought that up. So we're all sitting in the hotel lobby, and, you know, dead silence. Like, we're all just struck with shock. And some guy comes in. Anybody got a lighter? He's looking, and nobody says anything. Like, we just can't even like think straight or anything like that. And he's like, "Oh man, tough crowd in here, huh?" Like, we're just like, "Dude, get out of here!" You know, it's like, do you have any idea what you're, you know? So it kind of made me think of that.
Wow.
So yeah, my stepdad murdered my mom on her 40th birthday. So
while you were on the phone with her.
Yeah. So, you know, even my mom, and you talk about other parents, like, oh, if something happens to your parents, like, you're going to live with this person or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So we did lose both of our parents on the same day. My stepdad went to prison, or went to jail. My mom died. My sister, so I'm 19. My sister is, I think, 18. It's 2 weeks before she graduates high school. She's about to graduate. She lived with them, lived at home with mom and stepdad. And we lost both of our parents on the same night. So we go back in the house, we're like, well, now what? Like, there's food on the table, there's like, you know, things, you know, stuff at the house, and there's just nobody there anymore.
Wow. Life just has to keep going. But it's like, how?
Pretty much. Well, so there was somebody that was like family, like not family. Her name was Dawn. Just lived right up the street. And we all knew, like, if anything happened, that's where she would go and live and stuff. She had to graduate high school, you know. So I I had a job, like full-time job, lived in an apartment or whatever. I went home and I basically didn't get out of bed for a whole week straight.
Just struck with grief,
Yeah, I mean, I
depression.
mean, like you don't stop crying for days when something like that happens. So lost my job, of course. I had no
Wow.
call, no showed for like 3 days, and then after I finally called him back, I'm like, dude, I just went through this. Like, can you give me like just a second? But of course, they have to do what they got to do. So I lost my job. Well, after that, I went off the deep end myself. I was already kind of using some drugs and everything like that. Well, I got really heavy into that. Like the amount of grief and everything I went through, that was like the way I was trying to like numb that pain.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was using all kinds of drugs and I was selling drugs. I didn't even have a job. So probably for like a year, that's all I did to make money and
This
stuff
was
like
your
that.
income. Okay.
Um, and I was living this lifestyle. I had no family there. I had my sister, but shortly after that happened, she moved down to Omaha and I was still in Wisconsin. So basically I was up there by myself.
You were.
Yep. So, and everybody that I knew over here, I would just be like, yeah, I got a job. I'm fine up here, but I'm living the craziest lifestyle you could possibly live.
And they had no clue.
Well, I think they probably had some clue, but there's nothing you could do when it was like about 8 hours away and I wouldn't want to talk to him on the phone and all this. So that lifestyle went on for probably a couple years or so. My sister's down here, I'm up there. You know, at some point when I was selling the drugs, I sold something to like an undercover cop and I got raided by the police. The cops smashed down my door. Like 20 sheriff and all these other guys come busting in and everything like that. They all got shotguns and they're pointing shotguns at my head. I'm like, oh shoot, like don't shoot,
Wow.
like so it came to an end.
Were you glad?
I was, and I was gonna say, I did not like the lifestyle I was in. Like, I didn't like it. And my grandparents would talk to me about God and stuff like that. I never went to church. Nobody in my family went to church. I was never a thing.
Really? Okay. But your grandparents would talk to you about God.
Yeah. So, growing up, they didn't go to church either. But at some point, they changed and they were going to church and they would pray for us and try to help in whatever way they could and everything. And so anyway, I kept telling people, like, I was so sick of this lifestyle. Like, it just leads to death. I mean, it's like everything about me was just I was nothing. I was just an empty shell,
Oh, man.
So, and I told people multiple times, I said, man, the only way I'm ever going to get out of this is if I get busted. Like, that's the only, because I'm just so deep in this lifestyle. Like, you think you can never change. You're never going to get out of this. I'm like this, and I knew, I told multiple people, and I swear I told somebody like the day before, I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And, no joy in your life, no nothing. And as soon as it happened and I seen what was going on, it was like slow motion, like finally.
A little bit of a relief.
I was like, finally, like now I can change, like I can get out of this. So yeah, that was interesting. Anyway, they ransacked the house, they put me in cuffs, and I was on a public road, like on a house, and I'm standing in my front lawn. I'm in my underwear, like I was sleeping. It was like 6 a.m. I'm standing there in handcuffs on the busiest street in the town.
Wow.
Cops everywhere. Oh, can you imagine that shame?
Oh yeah, everyone's out there watching.
People are driving by all slow, like, what's going on? There's cops everywhere.
Oh,
and then some guy standing in his front lawn in his underwear and handcuffs, So went to jail, and I didn't know what kind of trouble I was in, but it turned out I had several felonies pending, and it was kind of bad, I get bailed out 13 days later. or I'm sorry, it was 11 days later. That was like the worst 11 days of my life.
I
Like,
can't imagine.
like, you know, I'm a nice guy. I'm not violent.
Yeah,
Like
you're not a
I
criminal.
use, yeah, I didn't fit in with anybody in here. I'm like, this is not for me. Like,
Yeah.
so I was terrified because I didn't know what kind of trouble I was in. And I was terrified being in this environment and around all these like violent guys. Like it was crazy, you know, and I just was like, I got to get out of here. And, you know, someone gives me this little pocket Bible. It's like this tiny little thing or whatever. So I was reading that, and at that point, you have no choice. Talking about a rock bottom, that's a rock bottom. So I
Wow.
basically pray like the most sincere prayer, like, God, like I want to change my life. Like I will do anything. Like I was like, I'll join the military. I'll do anything.
You
Like
were
just
desperate.
give me. I was so desperate. I was like, just so. At the end of the prayer, boom, Jayson, you're being released. And I was like, oh, thank God. Thank
Really?
God.
Like in that moment?
It was in the moment. It was as soon as I'm done with the prayer. So I feel like that was such an answered prayer at that time.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. I was like, this is a great sign. I was like, thank you, God. And I was
Wow.
just crying and enjoyed, like, finally.
Yeah,
Like,
getting
God,
out of there.
Anyway, so I have court stuff. You know, I had a job, and so fortunately I didn't lose the job at that time. And so I went back to work, and I had to do, you know, going through hoops and whatever they make you do for that. Basically boiled down to, you know, it's my first time getting in trouble, had multiple felonies. They said, Jayson, if you know, my grandparents were at this point were really step in, and they were like sending letters to the judge, like, you know, we'll help in any way we can. I'm up there by myself.
Yeah, no support
surrounded
system.
by people doing terrible things and all that kind of stuff. The deal I got was.
So did your grandparents bail you out?
No, it was my girlfriend's mom.
Okay.
They didn't find out until probably after I was already out or whatever. Otherwise, they may have done that for me or whatever.
Wow.
So going through court, all this, the deal I got was if you move to Iowa, anyway, and you move away from all these people, this whole lifestyle, go on probation for 2 years, and if you can successfully complete probation, we'll expunge your record.
Okay.
And I was like, that's a deal.
Yeah, you're like, send me now.
Bet. That's what you would say. I don't say that, by the way, but I think that's funny. Anyway, I know the kids. Anyway,
you said bet.
I was like, that's a deal, you know? So that's exactly what I did. Came down here.
You needed a new scene.
Yep, I had to
start.
change everything. So basically got that fresh start. You know, I'm definitely an addict at this time. And so it wasn't a perfect transformation or anything like that. But in a general basis, it was a pretty big change because anybody I knew back there would be like, what the heck? Like, how do you change your life? How can you possibly get out of this lifestyle and stuff? So moved to Iowa, did probation, successfully got through that, and they did expunge my record. So I'd had multiple felonies for just a short period of time, and then I got that wiped clean.
Nice.
So that was pretty fortunate.
How old are you at this point?
Low 20s. I don't recall exactly, but low 20s. So pretty much I moved to Iowa. My sister's here. And I also have an aunt that was here. My mom's only sibling was one sister. So kind of changing away from all that story. Pretty much as soon as I arrived, they're like, well, so this is a little wild. My sister and my aunt joined some kind of a cult and ran away and abandoned their entire life. They had a house or an apartment, you know, fully furnished. They left. My sister had a car. Basically, they packed up and they just like headed south. Like they.
Wow. Do you know what it was? Like a religious cult?
Pretty much.
Most cults do have like a
They're
religious
very
affiliation.
religious, spiritual.
Wow. Do you know what it was exactly?
So after that happened, I'm like, so I heard about it. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, how's that even possible? Like
That's
me and my
insane.
sister, it was just the two of us,
Uh-huh.
1.5 years apart.
You were close.
We grew up close. It was pretty much, and then after our parents, we lost them. It was like, it's us against the world,
Yeah.
It was like that kind of a bond. So, so I'm feeling like a little bit abandoned and a little bit like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean a cult? It's,
Wow.
they're
Right when you moved back too.
It was literally like it was like right then. Like I didn't
Wow.
even really get to see him or anything.
Okay.
So, so they write this like 12-page email. They send it to the church. They send it to all the family talking about the cult. And, there's a lot of drama in the family that I didn't really touch on. And it's just all these unanswered things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, so like the apartment people's like, hey, like, are they paying their rent? I'm like, their car's still here. We're gonna have to tow this. And I'm like, I mean, do what you gotta do. I don't know. What I don't know. So
Interesting.
it's been like
Wow.
15 years that's happened.
Are they still in the cult?
Pretty much.
No way.
So they have no contact with anybody, any family, anybody, except for me. In the beginning, it was like maybe once I got an email saying, Jayson, like, we're alive and
Okay.
we're okay, and we can't tell you where we're at,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't tell you much more than that, and we don't have much time, so we got to get going.
Okay.
And it'd be like these really brief emails.
But they'd tell you they were alive.
Yeah.
A lot of times those cults are super controlled based, obviously, by the leader.
It felt that way so much. I'm like, why? You can't even write a full email. It's some brief paragraph, like, and then they're rushed out, like they have to leave,
Interesting. I'm really interested in cults, so that's wild.
Yeah. So, years go on, and they do, like, there's no phone number, no address, anything like that. So every couple years or so, they would email out saying, hey, we're still here, just so you know, or whatever. And I would, like, everybody we knew would be like, Jayson, have you heard from your aunt and your sister? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I'd be like, not really. Like, I get these emails and they say that they're alive and they're okay or whatever.
But what a dagger for you.
Yeah.
After all the loss.
Yeah. So, it's like, that's a death in its own way too, because like they're just gone.
Yeah.
Just like my mom was just gone, it's like everyone's just gone,
Man.
So yeah, they're still doing that today.
Okay. Well, we'll pray for them, because the power of prayer, they can get out of that.
And I know they're very spiritual and stuff. And then in their emails, they would talk about God and all these things and stuff. And I for a long time, I was so hurt. Like, it's like, I don't even want to talk to them. But over time, I would reply back to these, and there'd be these little bit of exchange in emails and such. One time, so of course you look them up, no one can find them. They're just like vanished off the face of the earth,
Isolated.
I did have this one person I knew. So everybody knows about this, like the family, everybody in Wisconsin, pretty much everything, and there's a lot of people that are really hurt by that too. Like my sister, had a relationship with people, and it kills people that I know, are so affected by that too, including myself and,
Right.
So anyway, I don't know if they worked for the FBI or what they did. They had some special way of finding people, and they're like, are you interested in me like trying to like track them down for you? And I was like, for years everyone's like, why don't you, like my grandparents do it, like, why don't you guys go track them down? It's like, for what? Like, if they're doing something they don't want to be found, what are we supposed to do? Like, just show up.
Sometimes if they're not ready, they're not ready.
Exactly. But anyway, one day, I was supposed to catch my wife. This is only maybe a few years ago. So they give us the information. They're like, yeah, they're in Texas. And my mother-in-law lives in Texas at this time. So we would drive down there like 13 hours and visit and stuff. And I was like, yeah, give me the information, So I got some information about it. and we like drove to like just go find him, They're like, we think your sister works here. She like was, I don't know if she was a counselor or something, some kind of something. I had an address, so I drove to this house, and I'm thinking, what's gonna happen? Like, just gonna drive to this house, And I get to the house, and there's like a for rent sign in the front yard. It's empty and stuff, and I'm like, oh
You just
shoot.
missed them.
We drove hours from one city to the next to try that. So then I had another address of basically a place of employment. So we went to this place and we like sat outside in the parking lot, like looking at the door, all these people walking out. So at this point, I don't even know if I know what my sister would even look like because it's been like, now she's like a woman. And I remember her as a kid with her senior photo. This is like the last photo that I had.
That's true. Okay.
But, nothing ever came of that.
You never saw it, never found her?
No, we sat there just looking. Catherine, is that her? Is that her? I'm like, no, that's not her. Like, I think I would know, but.
Wow.
So, so they reach out a little more often now. Like they would say, because now I got kids. I'm like, you guys, I have kids now. Like, do you have any interest in like meeting my kids? Like, this is a pretty special thing. Like, is that enough to like come out?
Yeah.
And so they would just email like, oh, we're thinking of you guys. Happy birthday to this and that, the kids or something like that. So that's been going on for a really long time.
Well, the brainwashing in those cults, it's hard for people to come back from.
Yeah, so they basically say they're doing fine. And they say like the hardest thing for them doing that is basically me, because they know everything that I've been through. And they're just kind of contributing to this like feeling of isolation or abandonment or just kind of being alone and stuff like that. Or like nobody loves me because everybody's gone and I'm by myself, and
that's heavy.
Anyway, kind of going away from that. So like my father, he's in California. He was never really in my life, like I met him, I was young and stuff. So just to touch back on that a little bit, basically like every 4 years or so, like my grandparents would like fly him out here, or he'd take a Greyhound bus and he would come out and visit, And I'd be like, wow, like my dad, like what the heck? Like, I guess you're my dad or whatever.
So he was in prison this whole time though?
He wasn't in the prison the whole time. It was maybe short periods of time.
Okay.
So I don't really know. I know that was a big part of his life. I'm not sure how long or when or anything like that. He really, at some point, I'm just like, yeah, he's gone, So he'd come out and he would visit and I'd see him like, it was almost consistent, like every 4 years. So I was growing up, and I'd be like, oh, he didn't look like me. He didn't, I was almost disgusted by the man. Like he looked like a homeless drug addict, just some crazy loony guy, like for real. Like,
okay.
But I was really interested in just, I'm like, oh, you're my dad. Like, it'd be great to like have some sort of relationship with you, So, and I was younger, so he'd give me some sort of hope, like, oh, I want to be in your life, and I'm sorry that I haven't been, all this stuff. And then he would go back to California after the weekend visit or whatever, and I would never hear from him for like another 4 years or so. And then that happened like 3 times. He'd come back out, I'm getting older. He's like, oh, you're so tall and this and that. And I'm just like, I guess,
There's no real like substance to the relationship though?
Not at all. Like there was no communication, no nothing. After a while, I got kind of used to it. I'm just like, he's just some crazy drug addict guy, and he, this and that. But last time he visited, he was so crazy. We'd be driving around, and me, my grandpa, and my father, and he would like jump out of a moving car. He like literally jumped out of the moving vehicle and was like, I'm going to the hospital. And he would just hop out. And we're just like, what the heck?
Wow.
Like, who does that?
Wow.
Like, how? He's like, oh, my chest hurts. And he just bails from the car mid-drive.
You're like, all right.
So we just went home, and they're like, where's your dad? And we're like, we don't know. He just jumped out of the car back there. We just, just that kind of crazy,
Yeah.
And eventually he comes back, and he's in the house, and I'm sitting in this room in my grandma's house. This is in Harlan, Iowa, by the way. And I can see the guy in the kitchen, like he's having some crazy conversation with himself, like he's schizophrenic, probably bipolar, just out of his mind on drugs. a lot of times he'd come out and he'd be sleeping on the floor. He would sleep the entire weekend.
That he's visiting you?
Yeah, he would never wake up for days.
Oh.
Like he would just be laying there like he was dead. Like my mom would like open his eyelid and he wouldn't even wake up or anything. Like it's like, what the heck?
Your grandma?
My mom at that time. Like that particular instance, my mom was still alive and he would come out and visit.
Okay.
So he did visit after she had passed too, you know. So he actually did get to meet my older 2 kids and stuff. So I had some pictures of him. We'd go to church and he'd be in there like dancing like a crazy guy in the middle of church. Like there'd be some like, you know, hallelujah, by and by. And he'd be like flying his arms and shaking his butt and doing all these weird things. Like, I'm just like, oh man, this guy, he's nuts. You know?
Wow.
So at that moment, you know, so he leaves, and then right after that, we get the call that he's got some really aggressive form of cancer, like a carcinoma on his stomach, you know. And they're like, we gave him 1 round of chemo, and it's not going to work, so he's going to die soon or whatever. So 1 month later, he died.
My goodness.
You know, it seems, and a lot of people are like, you talk about unforgiveness, and that's something that comes up, but I told him, so I knew he was going to die. He knew he was going to die too. And I heard that he accepted Jesus on the deathbed type thing, but I don't know any of that stuff. So a little part of me really hopes that did happen. But
yeah, we do.
I told him, I got to tell him like goodbye. And I was like, you know, like I'm not mad at you. Like it sucks that it went the way it did. And I'm sure that if he had what he wanted, it may have not been that way, but those drugs they consume a person. And I basically understood that. So I told him, I was like, I hope someday I'll be able to see you again someday, you know, referring to like in heaven, you know. And he's like, yeah, I'll come out and visit you again. I'm like, dude, shut up, man. You're about to die. Like, you're not going to visit me, you know. So yeah, so that was kind of the end of his story.
Wow. Do you feel like you forgave him before he passed?
Yeah, you know, I am a very forgiving person, and I feel like there's like with Tom like killing my mom, it's like I don't even have hatred towards him or anything like that. Like, you know, at one point, and I know he loved her and stuff. It was a drunken rage, you know, that somehow overtook him, and the worst outcome happened. Yeah. You know, and he just, you know, he was obviously full of regret and this and that. So he did get a life sentence, which in Wisconsin it's like 20 years. So I think for him, I think he was maybe 17 years with like 10 years parole. So he's got maybe just a small handful of years still to go.
Okay, wow. And he'll be
I think he sent one letter once to me. I don't even remember when it was, but I didn't reply back to it or anything like that. But I will, whenever he's out, like I'd reach out to him and just be like, hey, like, you know, just so you know, here's kind of where I'm at now, you know?
Yeah, wow, that shows a lot of growth.
Yeah, so yeah, talk about unforgiveness. I'm pretty fortunate that I feel that I don't hold on to this unforgiveness, because that definitely can consume you as a person.
Yeah, it can. That really, forgiveness is really the seed that can just grow. So much can grow from that. That you have to struggle with. The other person isn't even struggling with it, but just you would be. So good for you for being able to just have that forgiveness for people so easily after all that you've been through.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, and being able to tell him, like, actually forgetting to his face, like Jeremy is like, in his story, you mentioned that it was too late and he had to do it after the fact. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like, you know, I don't know what that would have changed for me, but I do feel that it was kind of nice to have that last conversation, just a little bit of closure and goodbye. And then after I got the call that my father died, I was like, okay. It's honestly easier that way, because it was hard, like knowing he was out there. I'm like, he doesn't love me or care about me or, you know, this and that, but he's over there doing whatever he's doing and stuff. And, you know, once he had died, I'm like, okay, this is a lot easier. Like,
you didn't have to worry about those thoughts, or?
Pretty much. So, I know that's not the happiest thing, but, you know, that is how I felt. There was just a little bit of closure, like, all right, he's gone. Now I definitely can't have any kind of relationship with him.
Move forward.
honestly, I was so used to that it just was like, oh, whatever, you know?
Well, and you probably also didn't have to worry about him going in and out of your life. Are you going to be here? Are you not? Do you love me? Do you want to be here or not? So I could imagine that that is some kind of just like, okay, like it's sad, obviously, to lose him, but you've forgiven him and now you just know, like, I can just move forward without
Yeah,
having this
exactly. And he wasn't in my life
issue.
anyway. So when he actually died, I was like, okay, well, it's pretty much the same anyway.
I
Like,
mean, what else can you do, you know, besides move forward?
yeah. So kind of moving past all this. So yeah, death is something that I've been around a lot
Yeah,
at
you
a
have
young
very
age.
intimately.
Um, anyway, let's see. So I'm living in Harlan, Iowa. You know, I get a job, you know, changing my life, this and that. The next thing that happens is I meet, so my girlfriend at the time, we used a lot of drugs together. Like that was a thing. So at one point, and she was here and, you know, that was kind of over. So she moved back home to Wisconsin and then I stayed here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met another girl named Alicia and, you know, we were dating and this and that. And, you know, I don't know, 6 months or so, and then all of a sudden she gets pregnant. So, you know, that's crazy. I don't know, in my 20s, I guess, and here comes my first kid,
Wow.
Dan. You know, so very soon after she's pregnant, she actually breaks up with me, and so that was a really hard time in my life because, you know, I'm thinking, okay, now I have to be a dad. I'm trying to transition like mentally, like, oh, I guess I'm going to be a dad now, whatever that looks like. I don't know how to be a dad.
Yeah, you don't.
So she breaks up with me and, you know, I'm going through, like, she's pregnant and she's like, I still want you to be the kid's dad and everything, even though I don't want to be in a relationship. So that was hard. And then, so I'm doing appointments, you know, all those like pregnancy appointments.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to show up and, you know, try to be the dad or whatever. So at some point I meet Catherine, my wife, and while I was expecting my son from a previous relationship,
Mm-hmm.
Catherine gets pregnant right away. Boom.
All right.
So I had 2 girls pregnant at the same time.
Wow. All right. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take on.
Yeah. So my 2 children, Dan and Kaylee, you know who they are. They're
Mm-hmm.
here.
Yeah.
They're 6 months and 8 days apart.
Well, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't know that, and you know that was like that brought a lot of shame too. The very public form, you know, everything else I could hide all the sin and shame and everything like that. Like no one sees who I am or what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just act like I had it all together, and then that happens. Well, you can't really hide that.
No.
So that was interesting. So the kids come, and then and people are like, "Oh, are they twins?" Like, well, they're not twins.
You're having to tell the story a lot.
They're just close in age. I had to tell it 10,000 times. You know, it's just recently that I don't have to bring it up anymore. Like everybody found out. Everybody knows this and that. Everyone's kind of used to it.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 car seats, one on each hand, or baby carriers or whatever, and it's interesting because Kaylee, the younger of the 2, is like bigger, you know. So they're like, and they're in the same grade, by the way. They're both in 5th grade.
Oh, I never knew that.
They go to different schools because Dan's mom lives in South Omaha, and so he goes out here, and we live in Council Bluffs. So my other kids go down the street there. So we do have a split custody arrangement, this and that. I get a tiny bit less than half or whatever. So, you know, I'm fortunate in the sense that Alicia is a very good person. Like, she goes to church, she didn't do drugs, doesn't have any, like, you know, she was just a nice person, you know.
Nice.
So even though it's hard, we've been able to get along. Everything's been cordial and everything like that.
Co-parent well.
Exactly. So a lot of times we would go to the kids' game together and this and that, with the sports and all that. I do pay a little child support and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so you hear other people with situations that are similar, and they're just, oh, they're arguing, they're fighting, and you know, the, there's the kid suffers and all
Mm-hmm.
this. And it's an interesting situation for Dan because it's like, he's the greatest kid in the world, by the way,
Yeah, he's
like the
sweet.
perfect kid. I mean,
Aw.
and, so I wonder about that. Like, and I talked to him, like, I tuck all my kids in every night, and it's like, I know it's hard. He goes back and forth from house to
Yeah.
house. He has two different lives,
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder what that'll happen, like behaviorally and stuff. But it's been since the day he was born, so that's all
Yeah.
he's ever known. Mom's over here, dad's over there, and I was, with somebody else right away.
Yeah, but at the same time, I have those same kind of questions too. We were actually just talking about it at our last women's gathering. When people do have kids outside of marriage or whatever, and obviously we know like the statistics sometimes aren't great for those kinds of kids or kids who grow up without a dad even. And obviously we know the devil, he has a plan for kids who don't have dads or kids who are in split homes or whatever. But at the same time, I just wonder like, well, what can God do? What does God want to do in Dan's life?
I would say
Obviously we know the
something.
devil wants to, mess with his mind or whatever, but at the same time it's like, actually wait, like you're saved now, you're a child of God, and so is Dan, so
And so is his mom. So,
yeah. I mean, it's not probably what you would have hoped for.
but it's
But
the
here you are.
circumstances are as ideal as possible.
Yeah,
Really.
and here you are. And now all you can do is move forward. And I'm just like, hearing just so far what you've gone through in your life, how you are just a good dad. Probably, I'm sure not perfect, but you don't seem like, you just seem like a good dad. And I'm
Thanks.
just like amazed how you were able to get here
I said to some people, I was like,
and raised both your kids.
I've said to people like, my dad was never in my life, but I did learn something from the guy,
Yeah.
what not to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Statistically, what are the odds of me not being a good dad?
Right.
Extremely high.
Extremely high. The odds of you, you did land in jail, but on longer term, it's just like you really beat the odds.
So anyway, that was very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard on my wife, Catherine, because it's like, oh, your ex is still around or whatever, and we see her. And so, they're both very good people and everything. We all have, loving hearts and the best interest for the kids and all that stuff. So it's been nice. Like a lot of times, like when we exchange Dan, like it'll just be like I'm working. I'm like, hey, they meet each other, stuff. Like we went to the school conferences, and all three of us would be there, stuff like that. So they get along, pretty well and everything. That's too, good. Which is pretty nice.
Doing what you can just for the best for the kids.
And it's been so long that it's just kind of routine now. So it's kind of settled down, So we're all just kind of used to the lifestyle. And so Dan's only here every other Sunday and stuff like that. It's hard. It's like we wish we could have him all the time. We try to do family stuff, there is that kind of stuff, but we just do the best we can,
Yeah,
and
with
it
what you
seems to
have.
be working pretty good for the most part,
Well, and that's something that I always think about, with our parents growing up and, how their parents raised them growing up. And obviously you had it rough. You had a hard childhood. And we can either, like you said, take that and become the same parent, or take that and hold on to resentment and unforgiveness, or we can say, all right, God, they did the best they could with what they knew. And I'm going to choose to forgive. I'm not going to choose to hold on to resentment. I'm not going to, be angry toward them or make me into a bad person. Just, I'm going to give them grace, because we expect God to give us grace every day of our lives, right? So, if we can do that for our parents, and hopefully we are healthier parents than what we had, that's our hope for our kids, that we can tell them and be honest with them, I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect dad. I'm not a perfect mom, but just give me grace. I'm doing the best that I can. And hopefully our kids will understand that.
Yeah, and as my kids are getting older too, like, some of my past has come up a little bit.
It's kind of inevitable, I would imagine.
yeah, it's like when they're younger, they don't know. I'm just a dad and I'm there and I'm providing and loving and,
And they get
this and that.
older.
And that's all they know, but as they get older, they get smarter and
Mm-hmm.
I talk a little bit and, they don't know everything. And I was talking about this video. They're pretty interested in like seeing it. And I'm like, God, it's like, do I really want you guys to see this? Like I've told you everything I want you to know, but,
Up until now.
they don't know, like with the drug stuff. So they're going to see this or they're not going to see it, You want to talk about generational curses? That day that that was such a huge motivator. Thinking about that, like I want to cut that off.
Yeah.
Because it got me,
Mm-hmm.
like my parents and even beyond their parents, like the drug use, and alcoholism, and the violence and
Mm-hmm.
drama and all these terrible things. I do not want to pass that on to my kids.
No. And you just even saying that is good enough, I think. It's a start, and your kids seeing you're healthy. You're not perfect, but seeing you're healthy. And eventually them knowing your story and then you saying, but I want better for you. And you saying and telling God, my kids are not going to have to go through what I went through. They're going to have it better. So good for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good for you.
As the story gets better at this point, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So, been married for, I should know, it was like 8 years or something, 8 or 9 or something like that.
Grace, Catherine.
Yeah. We got 3 kids now, 11, 10, 6.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived in the same house their entire life, the house we live in now. Like when I was growing up, I moved every 2 years. I've lived in different states. I had different guardians. I had all these things. So they're in 5th grade. So, that was right after I just got back with my mom, So I've been through like a million things at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so proud of myself for the fact that they've had a very stable life so far, like in the same house. They have had 2 married parents that love each other and do their best to provide and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was thinking of that word stability is what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I've never really experienced that. This is the house I live in now is the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my life.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Good for you. I'm proud of you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So
that's huge.
Yeah, like because it could be so different,
Yeah, that stability is important too for kids.
So anyway, so we've been going to church for, we used to go to Crossroads Church in Council Bluffs for, 5, 6 years. And then we've been coming here for a couple years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been big about changing my life and, and living for God and trying to live for my family and stuff and just be the best person I can be,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're doing, And we're in here, Brad, lift your hands and this and that. Like, I feel like I may not, as far as like healing and stuff. And I feel that, and you talk about this too, this is like a church of healing and stuff. And I think me just kind of just getting this off my chest a little bit, it's a little heavy. So I'm not going to like tell people this story and stuff.
Not just
That's
in
why
passing.
I've dropped it on a couple of people and they're like, dang, like, why'd you do that? Or why'd you tell me that? Now I'm crying or something. It's like, I know, well, so it's just easier to keep it all in,
Yeah.
So it's like I carry that around a lot over the years and stuff. So that's why I kind of like doing this. So it's like I don't have to tell everybody anymore. I could just, it's like having the kids. Everybody just kind of knows,
It's out there.
Anyway, there's some other people in my life that, so Dawn, that was where my sister lived with for the last couple of weeks. Major alcoholic, just like my mom, in prison. She got 5 drunk drivings in prison, this and that, and it led to her death too. So pretty much like the second mom I had, she died.
Oh.
Her 2 kids, Matt and Gabby, they're like brother and sister to me. They still live in Wisconsin. I just want to tell you guys, Matt and Gabby, that I love you and, I understand the pain that you guys are in, they're both suffering on deep levels due to them, my aunt and sister joining the cult, their mom dying, my mom dying, all the things. We've all been through so much stuff, and alcoholism and drug use have consumed the two of them too. And I just want to say, you guys, I hope you're going to watch this, and there's healing that can happen, and I want that for you guys. I think about you guys all the time, and I love you guys. I just wanted to give them just a time of a shout out and stuff.
That's so true too. There is healing. You don't need to be stuck in that grief, the hurt, the pain. There is healing. There's healing in Jesus.
So I am kind of past that too, in some respects anyway. I feel like some of that's maybe still there, but I never have been fully healed, I think. So mentally, I've tried to study my mental behavior and stuff, and I've seen counselors over the years. I tried that, and the one time I'd be talking to a counselor, and the lady literally nodded off in the middle of our conversation, literally fell asleep, and I couldn't believe it.
Oh gosh!
I was like, this is ridiculous. I got up and I left while she was sleeping. I just walked out and I never went back. Oh gosh!
Yeah. Wow. That's not helpful at all.
Yeah, and then
after you're spilling your guts to a stranger,
I'm not even sure what level to the story I got. So I'm like, it takes a lot of energy, emotionally, and time, and to talk about the kind of stuff like even we're doing now.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
And so I didn't like the counseling. I was like, this isn't. I do feel that talking about things can help, kind of like we're doing now.
Yeah.
But that did not work for me. With that, and then.
But you were wanting to go see somebody.
Yeah,
to get some help.
Yeah, and I've tried. I've seen some doctors, and they're like, oh, you can try these medications for your depression and anxiety and all these things. And I've tried that a little bit, and I didn't like that either. Yeah. I just, I didn't do very good with taking it like you're supposed to. And, I'm like, it's not really working. They're like, well, try this. Well, I'm not sure that's working there. Well, try this. I'm like, what is this? Like, you just throw out random medications. You're just going to feed these to people. Like,
they do.
Do you have any idea? I could tell you anything I want. You're just going to give me something like.
Well, because for them it's money. It's not really about seeing you be healed, and they want to just medicate you. But Jesus is like, hey, no, I want to
That's the medication that we need.
Yeah, honestly, it is.
It is.
It is. I mean, I'm not saying get off your medication or don't take it, because it's obviously doctors are a blessing and medication is a blessing. But man, sometimes you just need one touch from Jesus, and it's enough.
So I believe all that too. I understand that some people it benefits them and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, I was like, this is not the
It wasn't working for you. You didn't like
the healing that I require.
Yeah.
And then they'd give you a doctor bill, hundreds of dollars. I'm like, nah, I don't be paying money.
It didn't even help.
Yeah. Anyway, so I did try all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So you tried a therapist. You tried medication. You're like, that's not good enough. I need Jesus.
Yeah. So, so here I am, dad to 3 kids, married to a wonderful wife, I'm definitely like the best dad. Like, I love my kids. I tuck them in every single night and talk to them every night, just heart to heart. For years I've been doing that, like their whole lives, I come to church, I serve here every single week back there.
Yeah.
This is the best. I love coming here every Sunday and stuff like that.
I'm glad you guys are here.
And listen to Pastor Brad. It's like, man, every single sermon is always to me. Everyone says that, but it truly is,
How does he know your business?
So, I'm blessed. Like, I try to live like a godly life. Serving here, I have my own business now, and that is definitely blessed. Like, I can't believe how successful that is.
It's
like,
thriving.
I'm really passionate about what I do, and it really reflects on everything. And so that's going extremely well.
You're going to Love and Respect, our marriage class.
That is awesome. It's
been great.
I was never, I never learned how to be a dad or a husband, obviously.
Yeah.
that is such a great class. And I've told people, I was like, if you're married, like you really need this because, we've been on the crazy cycle and this and that over the years, over and over and stuff too. But ever since it was like day one,
I think week one
it was like week
was
one.
such a wake up call for everybody.
And we were just that too. And when we do the video on that, we'll kind of talk about that too, because I know that's kind of coming close.
Give a
to
little
an end.
testimony on how that's going for you guys.
So,
It's a life changer. I don't think it's just a marriage changer. It forces you to change who you are and go against your nature, especially if you've never been taught how to be a father or a husband. How do you know?
Exactly. I never seen my mom have a good relationship. I never had a dad. It's like I'm just trying to figure this thing out. I'm like,
figure it out as you go.
I'm trying to figure out this whole life thing, like as I'm going along. But yeah, so that has really helped our marriage too.
That's great.
Love and respect, because we right away we're just like, I'm showing love and she's showing respect. And even beyond the marriage thing, talking about the kids and everything like that, like it just opens your eyes to those relationships, blue and pink and stuff like that. Like even my kids were talking about that in the class. They're like, oh, like boys, they want to show their muscles, and it's like they're so tough, and it's like, okay, let me feel your muscles, and I'm just like, I usually I can wrap my whole arm around their my whole hand goes right around their whole arm,
Yeah.
And then Dan the other day, like I was like, dang, dude, like I can't believe you got some muscle definition. I was like, he's getting bigger, he's 11, he plays football and everything. I was like, damn, son.
So it's teaching you how to talk to your
I was honestly
kids.
surprised, and then I could tell like how respected and loved he felt, like just getting compliments from his dad and stuff like that. And then I could feel all that. I was like, wow, like
that's so great. And I think people underestimate stuff like small groups in church. They think, oh, I go to church every Sundays, but like, okay, that's great and all, but really it's like those small groups, the relationships you have with the men in church, like Jeremy. That's where it really gets down to the nitty gritty and you are challenged, That's great. I'm really proud of you for doing that.
Yeah,
Not only for you helping change your marriage, grow your marriage, but also learning how to become a father. You never were taught.
So somehow through the grace of God, and it's all it's all going really well.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible.
So and here we are.
Here you are. And we always say in this church, I might have said it in Jeremy and Amanda's video, but this is just the beginning. I really feel like that for you. It's just the beginning. Where you maybe felt like, when you were a child, why am I going through this? And then when you're a teenager in jail, why am I going through this? Or before that, losing your mom. Why, God? I spoke about it in my devotion on Sunday. When it looks like it's over. When Jesus was on the cross, it looked like the devil had won. When it looked like in every stage of your life that the devil had won and it was over for you, God was like, nope, I'm in the middle of it. I'm still in the middle of working and doing something. And it's like, that's your life. That is literally your life.
Yeah. I feel like for many years, the devil would be be on my back, like a piggyback ride. And he's got his arm wrapped around my neck, whispering in my ear, that's kind of what it's been like for so many years, but the devil is a liar.
He is.
And, after I figured that out and, so I don't listen to that anymore.
Good for you. And
that's life-changing too,
Yeah, good for you.
Punch the devil in the face.
That's right. And he smells. Like Brad always says.
That's always pretty funny.
Good for you for not listening to him, because the second that we listen to one lie, people underestimate that too. We listen to one lie and believe it in our mind. That's how a stronghold builds up in our mind. And what is a stronghold? Anything that has a strong hold on you, on your mind, will, your emotions, your body. So good for you. We cannot allow the devil to come into our mind and tell us one single lie, because then he builds a stronghold. And then you're thinking, I can't be a father, I can't be a good husband, I can't do this, I can't do that. I need to run back to whatever I can to numb the pain. But the devil is a liar.
Yeah. And I've had a stronghold for years on my life too with the addiction thing, and that's been So it's kind of been off and on throughout all the years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was really never able to fully give it up, and that it's hurt my wife, and that's kind of a lot of what marriage issues we had early
Yeah.
on and stuff like that. Um, but just, you know, being able to overcome that.
Mm-hmm. And being vulnerable enough to even share that. I think sometimes people think two things. I can't come to church till I get right with God, or till I get my life straightened out. Or they think, oh, I can't come into church because I'm a mess. Look around.
We're all a mess.
We're all a mess in some way.
And he says, "Come as you are." So I was a
Yes.
big believer in that, and I invite tons of people here, and they all think the same thing. Like, I'm such a mess. I need to get my life straight. It's like, yeah, you're definitely a mess. You're probably never going to get that straight until you meet Jesus.
Yeah. And
like,
he says,
as
come
you
anyway.
are.
Come anyway.
So that's kind of what I did, and
Yeah.
and it's definitely worked for me. So I think it can work for anybody else in those situations.
I think so too.
Especially here, God is very real in here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the presence of God is, like Brad was preaching about it on Sunday. You can watch online, or people can talk to you about God, but until you're in the presence of God, especially in a corporate worship setting like this, it's so tangible. You can feel it. And I think, again, like, I'm never going to look at you the same in this church again. Sometimes, like, again, Pastor Brad was preaching about on Sunday, we come to church, sometimes you don't feel like worshiping. Maybe you're having a hard day. Maybe you're just thinking about whatever, grief, depression, or just feeling like inadequate. But we worship anyways, because it's a sacrifice of praise. And honestly, I feel like I will
really
never
like
look at you
that.
again in worshiping in this place, knowing what you've been through.
And I'd be thinking, you'd be saying that, and I'd be like, my arms are so heavy, it's so hard to do that. But once you get them up there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can feel the love of God.
Yeah. That's probably all that's gotten you through. You tried lots of other things.
I've tried everything else.
You tried it all.
None of that stuff works. It comes down to decision making too. Like, it's like you can choose life or you can choose death. You just need to make the right decisions. So that's what I've been really focusing on, is decision making and discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of gotten me away from all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So life's not perfect or super easy, but I do the best I can every day,
Yeah.
and it's going pretty good.
It's going pretty good. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I appreciate this opportunity too, because, sometimes, you hear some other people talk about, some of their stories, and so I know I'm not the only one that has these type of stories,
Mm-hmm.
So it does feel really good to talk about it. And then, just like we talk about, like, being on the other side of healing, that's
Yep.
where I feel like I'm at,
Do you?
I do. So I appreciate doing this.
Wow.
So kind of going back to, I think, as a Joyce Meyer, I remember Brad saying something about, all the things that Joyce Meyer went through with that, and how she wouldn't change anything about it because that's made her to be the woman that she is today. I very much relate to that.
Do you?
Like, I've been through a lot of things,
You've been through it all.
but I love who I am today, and I love my family and my children, my wife. And if things were different, I may not even be here right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can look back at your life and say it was all worth it.
Yeah, I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't want anything to be different than what it is right now.
Wow. That's so cool. That's so cool to hear. And it's so cool to hear. Like, I'm so blessed to hear you and others say that, like, because we are so intentional about healing in this church. And you've been through a lot, whether it was your own choices or choices that people made for you. And we get it. It's real. It happened. But the Bible says that you're not a victim. You are more than a conqueror. So I think it's really important and so cool to hear you say that, like what Brad was saying, and what the other person told him, and I feel like I'm on the other side of my healing. That's
I really
so
enjoy that
encouraging to
too.
hear. That's really great. And we're believing that for you and everybody in your life, your kids, and Catherine, and everybody in your family, and those who watch and listen and are going to be encouraged. And I stand by this and I believe it. You've heard it before. Healed people heal people. And what the devil intended for bad for your life, we believe that God can turn it around for good, and he's going to do it.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe that too.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing this story. This has been incredible.
I appreciate it, and thank you too. So
Yeah, let's wrap up in prayer. And yeah, I'm excited to see what God continues to do in your life. It's just the beginning.
thanks.
Yeah, all right. God, we just come before you, and just as Jayson said, he wouldn't change anything that happened to his life. God, we just say thank you for where Jayson is today and what he's gone through. What the devil intended for harm, God, you are using for his good and for your glory, Lord. So we just pray for continual healing in Jayson and in his family and his children. Help him to be the father that he never had seen. Help him to be the husband that he never got to see. God, we just speak healing over him, healing over his marriage, over his children. And Lord, we just pray that somebody in this church or watching online, maybe even watching years from now, would be touched by what you did in his story, God. He tried it all. He tried the drugs, he tried the sex, he tried the alcohol, he tried therapy, he tried the medication, but nothing healed him like you, Jesus. So we just thank you for healing. Thank you for your love. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
That was awesome. High five. That was great.